A Benedictine monk with training in quantum physics, Gregorian chants, and exorcism claimed to have built a device that could see into the past. This man was Father Pellegrino Ernetti, and he assembled his Chronovisor with a secret team of high-profile scientists that allegedly included Enrico Fermi and Wernher von Braun. 50 years ago, they told everyone they took pictures of Christ's crucifixion. Unsurprisingly, the evidence didn't hold up, but that didn't stop the story from getting stranger. Regardless of whether the thing ever actually existed, the Chronovisor did successfully get us talking about the Scole Experiment, Edison's spirit telephone, and why the past might be genuinely incomprehensible, even if you have the means to look. Welcome to episode 50, everyone.
Well, we said we wanted to keep you updated on the no-kill run and our Patreon and all things, and so let's do that. I think we're recording this on Monday, the 23rd of February. We are 3/4 of the way through with the founding membership, basically. We have 76 out of 100 patrons that we were going to get before we just close that. And that is the membership that you can get at a discount to become a patron. So it's less than the fellow traveler tier. Just be advised. And when we get to 100, we'll close it off, but you can still obviously become a patron. So we're really happy about that. And then I don't know that I should say this, so you can cut it, but Brother Richard is now a patron, which is amazing. Then he showed up on the patron Discord, which was
unbelievable.
Totally delighted.
Yeah.
Super amazing. And people were asking him about whether or not he's seen the movie Rabbit Trap. So,
oh, that's a great question.
That yet. I need to watch that one.
He hasn't either. So
Okay.
maybe a Brother Richard watch party or something.
Yes.
I feel so silly for asking this, but does Brother Richard watch movies? I mean, I'm sure he does. He has to, right?
He says, I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited to see it. So,
Okay.
you know, I don't know how much we should get into Brother Richard's personal life, but as long as far as cinema goes, I think he does go. You know,
That's good to hear.
People probably feel better when they see a mendicant come into the theater. Like, maybe, I don't know. I'd relax a little bit, I think.
I'd feel better anywhere with a mendicant there.
Especially Brother Richard. Mm-hmm. So we're doing it. And more data, by the way, is coming out about algorithmic feeds and what they do to your brain. And I feel like we made the right decision. That's how I feel about it.
I think so. There's a couple of interesting updates that I haven't talked to you guys a ton about. One is I don't talk a ton about our download numbers. I don't watch them very closely on every platform, but I do watch them on Spotify because that seems to be where a lot of our new listeners are finding us, is on Spotify. And it seems like we are growing since we started this effort, which to me suggests that people are sharing, that there is some actual person-to-person sharing going on, which is very exciting. And so want to encourage, as much more of that as possible. We aren't growing logarithmically, we're not viral, but I think that the people who are discovering us hopefully like us enough to stick around and keep listening.
Well, and I like to think, too, that it's in part because people understand that we don't grow without you. I remember hearing this definition of burnout a couple years ago. They were specifically talking about workplace burnout. How you burn out when you feel you can no longer affect the outcome. When you basically lose hope and you feel like you don't matter. You matter to us. We aren't going to grow without you sharing the podcast, period.
Yeah.
You will directly affect whether or not people find out about this podcast and whether or not we can keep doing it.
Very well said. And, there's something else going on, which this is very inside baseball, so maybe I'll cut this. But apparently, because we're part of the Spectre Vision Network, we have conversations with some of the people who run that network and other shows within the network. And one of the things that seems to be emerging is that the algorithm does not really love UFOs. So, because we do talk about UFOs sometimes, there's a good chance that we wouldn't even see a lot of success if we were to be, trying to juke the algorithm for our growth hacks or whatever.
That brings up a good point, which is that the algorithm can be told what to promote, where, this kind of content will be suppressed and this kind of content will be amplified. And that doesn't have anything to do necessarily with even engagement numbers anymore. It has to do with just whatever is being pushed out. And so if it's a thing where UFOs are hot or UFOs are not. What does that mean? It means that if you want to get the numbers in that way, you have to chase the algorithm. You have to just go like, okay, whatever, I'll conform to whatever it is that's expected of me. And I don't think that that any of us are willing to do that. We just want to talk about the things that we think are important. And with respect to show growth, I think it's like gardening. I think of it like gardening, where you can get a bag of seeds and broadcast them all over, rocks and gravel and dirt, and some of them will take and most of them won't. And that's sort of like the algorithmic, like just, wah, or you can take each one and just put it in the ground where it's going to do well, where you think it's going to do well, and you water it and you tend it and it grows. So it's like fewer seeds, more plant growth. This is the way I've been looking. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
That's the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
And in this analogy, I like to think that I'm growing in the garden too.
Oh, for sure. Me too. Me too.
And I won't be eating any of the plants, I promise, guys.
Now you're getting weird.
We will not consume a single one of our listeners.
Thinking too hard about this analogy now.
It's not how many apples are on the tree, it's how many trees are in each apple.
Oh,
Shoot.
Yeah. Oh. That's both really deep and really corny.
Yeah. Now we've
just
gone
like
into
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deeply corny.
That's very Tom Core.
Deeply Tom Core.
Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, the biggest podcast in the universe, where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. But we know they are real, right, Tom? Right, Mallory?
Yes,
all of it.
Jordan.
It's all real.
All of them.
Every single one.
There's something going on. That's all.
I'm not destabilized for nothing.
Thank you.
If I'm going to lose my mind, it's going to be for something. Well, today, I want to talk about the Chronovisor. And this could have very easily been a very long episode, but I'm going to do my best to keep it very brief and very punchy, like we do. But this is a device that popped up in a recent episode of Jordan Crowder's show, actually, which piqued my interest. And then it's also been making the rounds on the internet again recently. So I'm going to do my best to summarize. The story starts with a Benedictine. Is it Benedictine or Benedictine? Is it Benedictine?
I'm
Do you
gonna
even
say
know?
That's the way I say it, yeah.
Benedictine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The story starts with a Benedictine monk named... I'm gonna get back on the horse here,
No,
guys.
I love Benedictine monked.
Oh, I'm so embarrassed.
No, it's good.
You'd think I'd
We
never
all-
hosted a podcast before. All right. The story starts with a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti, who was born in 1925 and became one of the most accomplished and respected figures at the intersection of religion and science, with advanced training in quantum and subatomic physics. He also achieved recognition as an expert in Gregorian chant, as well as he was a linguist and an exorcist who published an influential book called The Likes and Dislikes of the Devil. In other words, he was something of, and I think I'm coining this term, a Renaissance monk. Ultimately, though, it was his music scholarship, oddly enough, that led him to the ideas that would eventually manifest as the Chronovisor. Since Ernetti's academic work involved reconstructing ancient sounds, he wound up becoming convinced that every event that has ever occurred leaves behind energy traces, both visual and auditory, and that these traces never fully disappear. I'm reminded of the Akashic Record, as an aside. They just transform without disappearing, and that with the right instruments and methodology, they can be reconstructed into something legible. In other words, he believed you could witness any moment in history. In his efforts to build the Chronovisor, Ernetti was not working alone. He claimed he had a secret team of 12 scientists, including Enrico Fermi, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who built the first nuclear reactor, and Wernher von Braun, who you guys might recognize that name as the rocket scientist who put Americans on the moon and started out in Nazi Germany. According to Ernetti, the work began around 1952 at the Experimental Physics Lab at the Catholic University of Milan. alongside another priest named Father Agostino Gemelli. Man, I'm just probably butchering these Italian names. I'm so sorry. The device itself was supposedly a complex array of specialized antennas that could tune into specific historical frequencies or residual energies, combined with cathode ray tubes and electronic oscillography equipment that could convert these ancient echoes back into sound and images. Ernetti even claimed it could pick up thoughts, since thought is just another form of energy emission. So, what did they allegedly see with this thing? Ernetti claimed that they witnessed Cicero delivering a speech in ancient Rome. He claimed they saw the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. He claimed that they were able to use the device to recover the full text of Thyestes, a lost tragedy written by the Roman playwright Quintus Ennius. And then, naturally, they witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. He described Christ's appearance, his surroundings, the expressions on the faces of the people watching him die. This whole story first broke publicly in 1972, which is 20 years after supposedly it started getting developed, which is kind of a significant timeline. At that time, journalist Vincenzo Maddaloni interviewed Ernetti for an Italian periodical. In that interview, Ernetti presented a grainy black and white image that he said showed the face of Christ during the crucifixion. I'm going to stick there on the wording a little bit, that he said showed the face of Christ during the crucifixion, captured through the Chronovisor. The image went everywhere, and for believers, this was it, the proof that the device was real, that the Vatican had access to a literal window into sacred history. But then, someone pointed out that the photograph bore a striking resemblance to a wooden crucifix housed in a sanctuary in central Italy, a devotional sculpture created by a Spanish artist following instructions from a mystic named Mother Speranza, who claimed to have had visions of Christ's actual appearance. When Ernetti's friend Father Francois Brunet confronted him about this directly, Ernetti admitted that the published photo was of the sculpture, not Chronovisor output, but he never clearly explained why he let a fake image circulate as evidence. The Thyestes transcription didn't really hold up either. Linguists looked at it and said that the Latin style wasn't consistent with what you'd expect from ancient Roman literature. So, the two main pieces of physical evidence both went to pieces. And then, nobody outside Ernetti's inner circle ever saw the device itself. He claimed that the Vatican ordered it dismantled and hidden in their archives after they recognized how dangerous it could be, which is definitely a plausible story in terms of how the Vatican operates. So maybe the weirdest part about this story is that after the initial revelations, Ernetti himself stopped talking. According to Father Brunet, Ernetti told him privately that his Vatican superiors had forbidden him from speaking publicly about the device ever again. He said he was, quote, not free to speak, and that, quote, he had already spoken too much. Ernetti died in 1994, but just prior, there were reports that he admitted to fabricating parts of the story, but people continue to dispute whether that confession was genuine or coerced. Ernetti had also sent a letter to a colleague named Don Luigi Borello at some point, stating that everything about the device and Christ's passion was, quote, the sacred truth. The Vatican itself has never confirmed or denied the existence of the Chronovisor, which is very on brand for the Vatican. And of course, the very reasons it should be suppressed become the reasons people believe it is being suppressed. Naturally, the scientific community, whatever that means, says the thing is physically impossible, but the story is still compelling for all kinds of obvious reasons, not least because there are plenty of other reported vectors of accessing information remotely. So, why not this one? What do you guys think?
What a story. What a story. I could you so it's called the Chronovisor. Did you describe the device like is it like VR goggles?
I could not
but in the 50s.
I don't know.
You know?
I could not get a sense of my best guess, and I haven't seen any visual representations of this thing. My best guess is that it was an array of sensors that fed into basically like a TV. Or like some sort of like, monitor output thing where they were, trying to interpret these signals that they were picking up with the array of sensors that they had assembled into legible data. So I don't know what the thing actually looked like. There are no pictures.
What was Jordan Crowder's take?
I'd have to go back and listen again. The only thing I remembered, because I didn't go back and re-listen to the episode where he mentioned it, I just remember him talking about it with some credulity. I think that he was thinking like this is a plausible device based on what we understand about quantum physics and, et cetera. And again, I'm kind of the opinion that in terms of accessing things that already happened, like it's obvious that we don't broadly know how to do that from a technical standpoint, but it doesn't seem unreasonable that it would be possible.
I feel unconvinced in either direction. Pleasantly open on the chronovisor and possibilities, surrounding possibilities,
Well, one of the moments I said to remember the wording of a specific moment when he said, he admitted, okay, so no, that actually is a picture of this statue, but the statue was created by someone at the direction of a mystic who claimed basically the same thing, but through different means.
Interesting.
Right? I saw it happen, and so this is what he looked like, and then gave those, and so maybe that was a story that Ernetti knew, and then therefore he picked that statue to like be the representation of the thing. But whether or not this thing ever really got built, whether or not it ever worked or they thought it worked, whether or not these other scientists were directly involved, like all of this stuff is totally unsubstantiated. But it is one of those things where Ernetti himself is such an accomplished and interesting person that it's hard to just sort of dismiss the whole thing out of hand as him being sort of some sort of grifter. It's like, again, where's the incentive there for the grift? I don't know. I can't answer that question either.
I love you pointing out that because I wonder if maybe one of the most dubious things about this is implying that you would need a device to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If a mystic could experience the crucifixion in some spiritual way, then like, what is the chronovisor doing exactly? I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
We've had conversations about the idea that we try to accomplish technologically what could be accomplished in a non-technological way, and you could maybe call it like mystic technology versus material technology. But either way, it's like using the means we have. And could you remote view the crucifixion? And then maybe could you do it with a chronovisor as well? And it sort of gives a similar output, but it's like two different means of achieving the same ends. Maybe.
Yeah. Water divine the crucifixion. Which seems to be a sort of spiritual, but possibly like just hypersensitive, some kind of like great connection to your intuition and other parts of your intelligence. You know what I mean? It's like these things are, these worlds, they merge. They clearly merge. Oh, Tom, we need to hear from you now.
As someone who, for most of my life, has believed that the past is unalterable and that there is such a thing as, verifiable objective truth. And the idea that like, if one were able, one could go back and hear Cicero, or see that play performed in Athens, thousands of years ago, and that it would be the thing, But does it scratch some sort of like primordial itch for me? Boy, does it ever, The idea that like all of this phenomena that we talk about is sort of inherently co-creative. You're talking about people being the medium through which, spirits communicate, or, one has remote viewing or senses of intuition or any sort of psi abilities. They're all filtered through the individual. The chronovisor would give it a validating legitimacy of quote unquote, objective, reality. But when you look at the picture of the crucified Jesus, he looks very much like a dude from like 1960. Like he doesn't look anything like what we're pretty sure first century Jews look like at all. He looks like the guy that they think he would have looked like at that time.
Well, I wonder about that too, because I think it's like this goes also to the reality of, we talk about perception a lot, and that a lot of like pretty much everything that we see is a combination of external stimuli and internal expectation. Like it's not right. The two things are never completely separate. So even if you're remote viewing, in fact, we had a lot of conversation about this with, I believe it was Mark Turner, about remote viewing and saying, hey, you can remote view something, but your expectations and your personal frame of reference and what you like, who you are, is going to influence what you see. So you're not seeing objective truth ever. Like we're not equipped to perceive objective truth. We are only equipped to interpret and filter external stimuli through our internal expectation and framing. So it could be, I guess what I'm saying is, you could theoretically, if it was possible, like for the sake of argument, if it was possible to take a device or a mystic ability and see into the past, quote unquote, see the thing that actually happened, your eyes might feed you. If you were witnessing Christ being crucified, you may see someone that looked familiar to you, even though at the time he looked different to other people at that time.
Yes. Which is why the UFOs that people witness conform to the aesthetics of the period in which they witnessed the UFOs. But why
Exactly.
the crucifixion, for crying out loud? Why not the resurrection? Or better, why not the Beatitudes?
Yeah.
No, let's do the crucifixion. Now, to me, I've never heard a story that sounds like more complete balderdash, more complete, absolute, uncut bullshit. I just can't, I don't buy it at all. Having said that, Astonishing Legends is in the middle of a giant 3-part series on the Scole Experiment. Everyone go listen to Astonishing Legends. They're wonderful. The Scole Experiment, which took place in England in the 1990s, which was not only rigorously studied by the psychical research gang, all of whom were skeptics and really controlled this stuff, but some genuinely inexplicable stuff happened. And I'll only name one. At some point during these proceedings, where these lay people and a couple of mediums would get together, bind themselves with like Velcro in chairs and in a completely empty basement, and stuff happened. Images appeared on sealed rolls of film, etc. Oh, it actually got crazy. At one point, this happened a couple of times, newspapers from 1946 appeared completely untouched. Perfect, as if they had just been grabbed from the newsstand, and they had relevant stories within them. And here's the thing, they were subject to chemical testing. Even if you grabbed a newspaper in 1946, and 50 years later, even if you had kept it in a hermetic, anaerobic environment, it still would have decayed.
Of course, yeah.
These were not. And not only that, it would have been physically impossible to reproduce them because if they were actually printed, they weren't scanned, it wasn't laserjet, they were actually printed. All of the fonts, the advertising, the stories, the images, the photo, everything conformed perfectly with that issue of that newspaper from 50 years before.
I think...
So what is that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Who knows?
Like,
I think
to me, that's more impressive than
it's
the Chronovisor.
Oh, it is, absolutely. So,
I mean, truly.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely,
Chronovisor is
easily.
A series of. Here's the problem with the stories like this. It's like it's just dubious facts. It's just like
it's just something someone said.
Claims.
Yeah.
They're
just
claims.
Like
yeah, and then people being
that,
like,
that
and that
were
was
totally
done.
unsubstantiated.
And
yeah.
that's what the information
Yes,
we
but
have.
very
You know what I mean?
appetizing.
Yeah.
Very.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so
you know.
I love the claim. I love the claims, and I love the story. I love the sort of frustrating mystery where you have, a guy who doesn't really renege ever, like completely on the thing. Apparently,
No.
just kind of goes
Committed.
silent on it.
Yeah.
And also like. Yeah, so I would say, I'm probably in the 95% camp in terms of thinking it's probably bogus, but I think that, but I also, I feel like
Do you want it to be true?
Well,
don't you want to tune
Of course
the
I want it to be
dials?
true.
And yeah,
Absolutely, but I think what I think what I think is probably true is that there is a there, as in he probably did work on the thing, and they may have had something. If I had to straight up guess, if I just had to like come up with my own version of the story, I would guess that he was working with some people and he was doing some things that got some results that were really, really exciting to him, but were not legible to anyone else. Like he wouldn't have been able to publicize them. And so what he did was came up with some things that were publishable, published them, and then people were like, sorry, this actually is kind of nonsense. And then he was like, well, yeah, that's true. Those are nonsense. But the thing is true. And then
this happens
essentially
all the
just had
time.
to,
It
absolutely.
happens all the time. Okay, so do you know about the famous fairy photographs that fooled Oliver Wendell Holmes in the late 1800s?
Like I've heard about this. Refresh.
These English sisters claimed to see fairies and decided they would photograph them, and they published some photographs. And Oliver Wendell Holmes, I think that's who it was, the guy who wrote, was it Sherlock Holmes? I don't remember. Anyway, he was taken in. Here's the thing, though. When you look at the photographs, they're very obviously faked.
Yeah.
And
They look
the
fake
girls
as hell.
admitted that they were faked, but they also went to their graves claiming that not all of the photographs were faked. It's just that they created one as an illustration of what they felt that they had witnessed and accomplished. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that, it's literally someone cut a little fairy out of paper and stuck it on a branch. And you're like, well, that's just super fake. But they swore that they had actually done it and that there is a photograph that they took of a fairy that exists, that is real.
I mean, I feel like this is... I always feel like this when we talk about cases like this. The reason that I don't feel I don't feel convinced in either direction is because it's like, well, this isn't enough information. And most of the time, we're probably never going to get enough information.
You'll never.
And so you end up hearing like, well, yeah, like if I was forced to act like this was the whole story, which of course it's not. If I was forced to act like this is the whole story, I guess I would say this doesn't feel like enough evidence to substantiate the claims or whatever. But I know it's not the whole story, and so
it never is.
I love this, but it is also going to be a frustrating piece of it always. How much of it is a person's ego being like, I would rather be silent and say, I've already said too much. Every time someone approaches me in the square, I've already said too much. I couldn't possibly. Your head would explode if I told you the truth.
There are dark forces at work. Powers greater than you can imagine.
Exactly. You get to be the cryptic man who's always got his hands in his coat pockets and hurries through the town square.
One other frustrating angle to this, though, is that it's like, it's so funny because that is such a trope. It's such a cliche for someone to be like, I can't say anything more. I've already said too much and there are dark forces at work.
Yeah.
Is often true of certain subjects.
Sure.
It's
like
so
we
is
know
lying your ass off.
Yeah. Oh no, that's the thing. Is that but it works. Like the reason the lie exists is because like it has precedent, right? It's like it would be an absurd thing for someone to say if it was never true. But like every once in a while, it is true. Every once in a while, you can't say anything more. Every once in a while, dark forces really are at work.
I'll leave this with the Scole Experiment. And I wanted to do a whole episode on this anyway, because I'm reading a book now called Phone Calls from the Dead. But Thomas Edison talked to, he did part of an interview, I think, with Scientific American, where he said, I believe that, you cannot destroy energy, and therefore the energetic signature of individuals persists after physical death. And therefore, if that's true, then it's possible to design some sort of very sensitive telephone-like device
and therefore
we could use
I designed it
to communicate with them, and I'm going to do that, which he
Yes.
never did. And then in the Scole Experiment, the spirits on the other side, who claim to be scientists in life, instructed these people on how to create one of these things, which had no power source, and germanium, which they used to use to make crystal radio sets, in full view. And actually, in discussions with, at some point, a voice appears through this device, which is not plugged in this basement. And the guys from the Society for Psychical Research, or whatever it was, forgive me for not having that to hand, were literally like, this was their bag. They were debunkers and functionally like tech bros at the time. And they're engaging in lengthy technical conversations with the disembodied voices about how to adjust the device so that they can be heard more clearly. And it was absolutely nuts. And one of them, who was a diehard skeptic, wrote something like, physics is broken, or something like the rules of the world as I've known it don't work anymore. Like he had a crisis.
Spiritual crisis. Yeah. The ontological shock.
It's the adult scientist equivalent of like taking your ball home with you. Like, I'm not playing this game anymore. Everyone's cheating.
Right.
He was admonished by the disembodied voices. Don't think of this in the way you're thinking about it. In terms of, I have no idea what very highly technical aspect of germanium they were discussing, but he was like, they were like, that's not how it works. Stop trying to make it work the way you think it's supposed to work.
I love it. I do have one other thought, and I thought it was my most personally intelligent take on this on this story, which is that there's actually a bunch of, and who knows if this may predate all of them, the other stories about devices that were invented to look into the past, to see historical events, etc. And the one thing that most of these stories are missing, from my perspective, is I'm like, well, who's holding the camera? How is this perspective being captured? Because anytime you can't...
Whose eyes?
Yes, through whose eyes, or through what's eyes, right? And I would accept someone who was there, were seeing what they saw, were hearing what they heard. What I don't necessarily accept is that you can just sort of arbitrarily place a camera perspective into a volume of space, right? The way that you do in like 3D animation, right? When you're like, you construct a 3D environment and then you're like, the camera goes here and it's pointed this direction and we see this frame. A lot of this stuff to me suggests that the people who are trying to invent this thing or describe this thing or talk about this thing don't really think through what they're actually trying to do. Like, how are you actually trying to look? Are you trying to look through someone's eyes? Or are you trying to create a volume of space that existed at that time? Like, what are you actually trying to do? From a remote viewing standpoint, it's a little easier to think of, well, it's your consciousness. It's your perspective. You are constructing that perspective. But if you're talking about from a technical standpoint, well, then suddenly you're asking the question of like, well, what are you looking at and how are you looking at it and from where? So anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring that up as it's kind of a killjoy.
Well, what about the way that you construct your dreams?
I mean, that's a great question because I think dreams are a lot like remote viewing, which is that you are, you on some level, your consciousness is directing the scene, so to speak.
Exactly. You're like directing a movie from your perspective.
Yeah. And so your point of view also shifts a lot, you know, depending on what the dream is like, depending on which character you are or not in the dream. Sometimes you are not even a character in the dream. You're just witnessing a scene unfold. And if you try to recall the dream, I think then you're also going through a lot of the processing work of constructing into a scene, of like picking that point of view, of laying out, you know, what is the framing of the thing. I think a lot of the time when we are witnessing stuff consciously with our awareness more purely, there isn't as much of a frame. And we are more sort of like broadly aware of a scene and of the sort of what's happening in it. But it's hard to, once again, it's hard to communicate that. You can sort of represent it with language if you describe the scene, but as soon as you try to build a picture, well, then you have to have something to look at a picture with, a screen, right? Like, what are you doing? How are you conveying this information or this experience? And I think that's where there's a lot of disconnect.
Well, I love what you're saying because I think that you're touching on why all of this stuff is so difficult to talk about. And so it actually feels like this whole area of study, if we want to call that, begins to degrade and decay when someone tries to take a picture of it, when someone tries to pin it down and say, this is material now. It's like, well, if it's a paradox, then it's maybe not. Maybe it's material, it's particle, and it's wave. So it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the things that we're accustomed to do to try and make sense of the world and to be able to let things be tactile. It's like, well, that's just not how this space works, baby.
And if you try, you may capture something, but it will likely be blurry.
Or incomplete in a way that convinces no one. And it's like,
exactly.
Well, I don't know how much this phenomenon cares that you're convinced because it's not really like that. I don't know. That's my vibe.
I have this story in my head, and I'm just going to say it's true, but it's always stuck with me, where I heard that a director was making a movie set in, I don't know, the 14th century. And my mind tells me it was Fellini, but I can't think of any Fellini films where this happened. But the idea is that he wanted it to be like a documentary, like literally as close to what it was actually like as possible. And so a great deal of thought and effort went into costumes and set design. Again, in my memory, someone was like, well, how are these people going to move their bodies? you know?
Yeah.
And he had his actors just wave their arms around in ways that just didn't make any sense because functionally the past is incomprehensible to us. If you actually saw, if someone actually had footage of people doing what it is they do in the 14th century, some of it I'm sure we would go like, you know, I mean, if we did hear Cicero give a speech, we'd go like, well, listen, his Latin's pretty good, you know? But like, I would think that there's some of it that would just be
Nonsense.
impenetrable, just not comprehensible by us.
Yeah.
And almost like infuriating. You know, in the same way that when we make movies that are set in the past, no one acts anything like they would have back then because we'd be so mad at the character for being so benighted. You get the most current people and thinking, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's always stuck in my head. People in costumes waving their arms around nonsensically.
To try and be as accurate as possible.
If anyone from the future is watching this moment, make sense of this, idiots. Couple of quick reminders before you go. First off, if you haven't left a rating on your platform of choice, please do that. One of the first things people look at when they're judging a show by its cover is the number of ratings it has. So if you dig what we're doing, show it with stars. See you next week, friends.